Chapter 26. Jordan loved art class. It was easier than any of his other classes, and way more fun. He hadn't realized how creative he could be until he sketched his first drawing, a collection of random objects on a stool. Even the teacher was impressed. Aaron, who was sitting next to him, glanced at his work and sighed. "Mine looks like a bunch of raccoons fighting over a monkey." Jordan laughed. "That doesn't make any sense." She showed him her sketch. "Wow, you weren't exaggerating. How did you manage that?" Aaron laughed, but then grew serious a moment later. "Everything okay with you and your family?" Jordan looked across the room to where Connor and Travis sat, talking. "Better, yeah," he replied. "I don't know what Grandpa did to Connor, but it seems to be working." "And he didn't do anything to you?" "No, I guess I didn't need it. Connor was the only one with the problem. I'm fly." Aaron laughed. "You're what?" "Fly. Cool. Okay. Super." "Oh my God, Jordan. You're stuck in the 90s, and I don't even think people said that in the 90s. "I'm bringing it back, yo." They laughed together for a while, receiving annoyed glances from Mr. Wong as he circled the room, surveying everyone's work. Once the two teens settled down, Jordan asked Aaron, "Would you still like me if I was weird? You know, the way Connor was?" "If you were weird, sure. If you were evil, I don't know." "Connor wasn't evil." "He did something to Jack and Leo that made them kill themselves. What do you call that?" Jordan sighed and said, "Evil." "Even if he isn't like that anymore, I don't know if I can ever look at him the same way again." "Am I guilty by association?" She grinned at him. "You don't talk like a 15-year-old is supposed to talk." "Neither do the teens on all those teen shows. I learn from them." "I like the way you talk. It's sexy." They stared at each other in silence after that. Jordan's heart pounded. Was Aaron coming on to him? Was she already completely over Travis? Jordan looked at her ex-boyfriend again, saw him laughing at something Connor said to him. Those two looked happy together, peaceful. One wouldn't have believed peace could surround this group of kids after all that had happened. "I like when you do that," Aaron said from far away. Jordan came back to himself and said, "When I do what?" "Scrunch up your eyebrows in the middle." She touched them there. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm just happy that you wouldn't think differently of me. That's what makes you a great person." She gave him a curious grin. "Thanks." Dawn stood in front of Mr. Lepper's house later that night, unable to turn away. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about the man since he died, and he knew to trust his instincts. There was something about this man, and Dawn had to find out what that was. He walked around to the back door and broke out his lockpick. He'd used this very pick to break into Ivy's house the night he killed Ethan. He didn't need that running through his head, though, so he kept his mind on the task at hand. A dog barked somewhere in the neighborhood, startling Dawn, but he kept picking the lock. Finally, it gave way, and he entered the house. He was standing in the dining room, the house completely dark. There were a few spots of moonlight that managed to make it through the windows, but it wasn't enough to really see by. He pulled a flashlight from his jacket pocket and turned it on. He then found himself standing in front of the back door with nowhere to go. He had no idea what he was even looking for, but he knew there was something. He figured the best place to start was Lepper's bedroom. The house smelled musty and old. Lepper had no family, so there was no one to mess with his belongings. Dawn couldn't imagine living alone in a big house like this. It was one story, though very spacious. He headed down a hall to the left and found 3 bedrooms, all the doors wide open. Each room was filled with crap. Leper must have been a hoarder. There were records, toys, books, and many boxes filled with items Don couldn't determine. He felt even more daunted. He didn't know what he was looking for, but whatever it was would be harder to find. He stepped into what he figured was the master bedroom. The king-size bed was covered in even more junk than the previous room. Where did the old man sleep if his bed was inaccessible? Don made his way to the closet, navigating the junk maze that cluttered the room. Everyone always hid stuff in the closet. Don managed to pull the door open and shine his light inside. There were clothes on hangers and on the floor. He shuffled through the junk, looking through the boxes that were piled in the closet's corner. Something smelled awful, dead, and Don didn't doubt there was some kind of rotting creature inside. A rat or a cat, perhaps. As he moved boxes around, he realized the floor gave a little under his weight. It was all hardwood. Don had seen enough movies to know people like to hide things under their floors. He stepped on every inch of floor he could reach and found a loose board in the corner. He lifted the board away and shone the beam down. There was another box. He lifted it out, thankful for the gloves he was wearing. The rotting smell was definitely coming from this box. Don steeled himself for a moment, and then he opened the box. He screamed and dropped it. He tried backing out of the closet, but managed only to hit the doorframe and fall forward, onto the box, onto the items inside the box. He screamed again and crawled out of the closet. He rested his back against the bed, breathing heavily. Don couldn't believe what he had just found. He hadn't been prepared for that. His instincts had done him a service, however, for now he knew that Mr. Leper had, in fact, been the Texas Devil. On his way back home, he noticed the dark sky becoming light with frost. It was going to start snowing soon. The temperature had also dropped a few degrees, so much so his breath frosted in front of him. When Don got to his house, he sat in his study and did nothing. He didn't call the police or tell anyone what he had found. The last thing he wanted was another reason for the cops and that nosy reporter coming around again. Don had left the box out. If someone found it, then so be it. He had found what he needed to be at peace. He now knew neither he nor his kids had killed those people in the woods over the past decade. It had been Leper. Don remembered the bodies being found with their genitals missing. Well, Don found those missing pieces. Leper killed those people, and Connor killed Leper. Justice. Don slept fairly easily that night, though he woke a few times to find Monica gone. At one point, he thought he was being watched by someone at the door, but when he looked, there was no one there. When he woke that morning, Monica was sound asleep by his side. He kissed her, and she awoke as well. "How did you sleep?" he asked her. "Not well." "I'm sorry to hear that." After Don showered, he called Stephen's house and didn't get an answer. He was warming up to the old man, despite his flaws, and wanted to invite him to one last dinner in the old house before the big move. Throughout the day, he continued trying to call his father, but still got nothing. Finally, he drove over to the house. 3 inches of snow had fallen overnight. When he got to the house, he knocked on the door and rang the bell. No one responded. Don tried the doorknob, finding it unlocked. He stepped inside. He found pieces of Stephen all over the living room, lying in their own pools of blood.